plug in my phone while I'm doing this. Hold on. There we go. All right. We are going to read from Codeword Barbelon 666, Danger in the Vatican. This is Book 1, The Sons of Laloya and Their Plans for World Domination by P.D. Stewart. We are in chapter 39. All right. Aleister Crowley and the little-known secrets of Freemasonry. Audi vide taste, to hear, to see, to remain silent. But Masonry still survives, vigorous and strong, as when philosophy was taught in the occult or Gnostic schools of Alexandria. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Aleister Crowley once wrote, "The ignorance of the Mason is quite boundless." Crowley was himself one of the highest-ranking Freemasons of his generation. As such, his jibe was directed not at the As such, his jibe or jib, how you don't jib me or jibe me, I don't know how that goes, was directed not at the illuminated Masons, but at rather those in the lower degrees of Masonry. Of this latter group, in their superficial understanding of the lodge, the Irish proverb is apt: dogs will bark at the moon. The vast majority of Masons have no idea of the intensely occult and sinister nature of their lodge. Likewise, those outside Freemasonry see it as nothing more than a quaint, if not weird, old boys club, an insiders network that provides lucrative business contacts and influence for its members, is how one outsider put it. Its rituals are perceived as meaningless, if not ludicrous. For example, Masonic brothers being required to roll up one trouser leg and utter archaic and sadistic oaths during their initiation. But is this all there is to Masonry? The Masonic leaders like to portray the lodge as a purely charitable organization. A recent issue of the Builder magazine, Masonic, proudly stated, Masonry's mission to the individual is to uplift his character and establish a nobler manhood. The classic definition of Freemasonry, as given by the lodge, is that Masonry is a system of morality based in allegory. But does Freemasonry deserve such accolades? Does it live up to or even aspire to these high ideals? Next to the Jesuit doctrines, we can charge no surer source of abuse and corruption of morality and pure religion and the manner in which it is represented than in the rites of Masonry. Much of Freemasonry is derived from the Hebrew Kabbalah, and it apes almost every other system of religion too, including Jesuitism. As Professor Robinson said, in all its progressive mummery, i.e., Freemasonry, we see much of the hand of the Jesuits, and it would seem that it was encouraged by the Church, Catholic. Lying, treason, and murder permitted. In an earlier chapter, we discovered that Freemasons and those belonging to the Masonic literary societies must take oaths of secrecy to protect fellow Masons without reservation, and to use all their names to extricate him or her from guilt, whether he be right or wrong. Here is the real sinister duality of Freemasonry. When a Mason is taking the oath of the third degree, he promises to conceal all crimes committed by a fellow Mason, except those of treason and murder. But at the 13th degree, the Mason takes an even more sinister oath to conceal all crimes, including murder and treason. You must conceal all the crimes of your brother Masons, and you should be summoned as a witness against Brother Mason. Be always sure to shield him. It may be perjury to do this. It is true, but you're keeping your obligations. Even worse, if that is possible, in the case of the Royal Archmasons, i.e., those beyond the third degree, They must also promise to keep secure and inviolable in their breast knowledge of any crime of a fellow Mason, murder and treason not accepted. Every Mason is expected to maintain a vow of secrecy concerning the order's ceremonies. At the initiation of a Master Mason, third degree, the candidate is required to. Why does it say third degree? I think it's 33rd degree. Am I misreading that? It says a 3 and a 0 on the top part. I don't know. The candidate is required to ask that his body be cut in two and his bowels burned to ashes should he ever break his oath of secrecy. That's crazy. He is forbidden from revealing to a brother or an inferior degree any of the secrets of his degree or other secrets of the lodge or risk death. The Masonic apprentice further consents to have his tongue torn out by the roots if he were ever to divulge anything to a profane and to suffer other mutilations. A profane is a derogatory term for non-Masons. We learn from the Masonic Handbook, page 183, by Freemason Edmund Ronayne, you must conceal all the crimes of your brother Masons. Should you be summoned as a witness against a brother Mason, be always sure to shield him. Freemason Ronayne continues, per verset, don't tell the whole truth in this case. Keep his secrets and forget the most important points. It may be perjury to do this. It is true. But you are keeping your obligation. And remember, if you live up to your obligation strictly, you will be free from sin. This is a Jesuit philosophy. It is a doctrine of the Jesuits that says it is not perjury or sin to equivocate in such and just cause. People believe this? The Masonic degrees not only have their secret passwords, codes, and rites of initiation, they have their own written constitutions as well. Rebold's History of Freemasonry boldly declares, the Freemason receives not the law, he gives it. And the 1880 Grand Lodge report gives Rebold's declaration the seal of approval, adding, in all this, we must not forget that Masonry is a law unto itself. Its perpetuity is dependent upon the force of its own influences. It never demands affiliation with any other humanizing agencies. The Royal Arch Mason swears, this is the full oath, I will aid and assist a companion Royal Arch Mason when engaged in any difficulty and espouse his cause so far as to extricate him from the same, if in my power, whether he be right or wrong. A companion Royal Arch Mason's secret given me in charge as such, and I, knowing him to be such, shall remain as secure and inviolable in my breast as in his own, murder and treason not accepted. Not only that, but as we read earlier, the Freemason is required by his oath to lie about the real activities and aims of the lodge. A former high-ranking initiate revealed that Masons are told, if your wife or child or friend should ask you anything about your initiation, as for instance, if your clothes were taken off, or if you were blindfolded, or if you had a rope around your neck, etc., you must conceal. Hence, of course, you must deliberately lie about it. It is part of your obligation. Albert G. Mackey tells us that the power of Freemasonry is in fact in its secrecy. For Masonry was organized to hide the truth, not to reveal it. One of their motto is hide and conceal. As Robinson wrote in Proofs of a Conspiracy, nothing is so dangerous as a mystic association. The object remaining a secret in the hands of the managers. The rest simply put a ring in their own noses by which they may be led about at pleasure. For as former U.S. President John Quincy Adams wrote in his letters on the Masonic institution, the candidate, when he takes the oath, is kept in total ignorance of what the secrets of the Taft consist. So, what is their great secret? If, as they would have us believe, Masonry is simply a fraternal and charitable organization, why is this inexplicable obsession with secrecy? And why does Masonry insist that its members take blood-curdling oaths to keep secret even things that they have not even heard or seen on pain of death, with dramatic portrayals as to how they would be killed if the member were ever to disclose the secrets of the lodge? What is the need to hide and conceal supposedly innocent and great truths behind strange and arcane symbols and code words? In short, what exactly is Freemasonry? The Masonic Lodge worldwide is a highly influential and in many circles respected organization. It claims some 23 million members, some say more. There are other semi-Masonic organizations whose members are unaware of the Masonic foundations of their clubs or societies. According to the highest Masonic authority in the USA, Masonry forms one vast society of free men held together by voluntary obligations. It covers the whole globe from Egypt to India, from Italy to England, from America to Australia and the Isles of the Sea, from London to Sydney, from Chicago to Calcutta. In all civilized lands and among folk of every creed worthy of the name, Masonry is found. Men like Garibaldi, Mazzini, Voltaire, Mozart, Masons many, are said to have been among their fellowship. The origins of Freemasonry. Some would have us believe that the origin of Freemasonry was in the medieval era. But Masonry has a much more ancient beginning than the Grand Lodge of England or the stonemasons' guilds. Its real source is the old Gnostic or Babylonian sun cult. The most creative attempt I have ever read on the origin of Freemasonry was in a Catholic document which stated that once upon a time, a certain king and his nobles had such large families as to be unable to maintain them decently, and taking counsel together, devised they should be taught some trade whereby to live. A great clerk, Euclid, proposed teaching them geometry, called Masonry, the most honest craft of all. He ordered that the most advanced of the scholars should be styled masters by the rest, but that he should call none of his inferiors either subject or servant, but always my dear brother. In this manner, by good wit and geometry, began first the craft of Masonry. What a comic piece of cock and bull, oh my goodness, from Rome. The document adds, the Mason must love God, Holy Catholic Church, and his fellow Masons, wheresoever he may go. Behavior in church, to use the holy water on going in, to kneel down, never sit nor stand, make no noise nor talk, but pray all the time, saying certain prayers given in the text. To attend Mass daily, but if at work, to repeat a certain prayer upon hearing the Mass bell. Well, the story did begin once upon a time. Freemasons like to perpetuate another myth, that their fraternity is derived from the English medieval stonemasons guild. Now, this is what I heard, which to the reasoning or to the unreasoning mind sounds credible. Yeah, so I believe this. I really did. But as John J. Robinson's extensive and meticulous research has shown, against all expectations, these guilds, stonemasons, were conspicuous by their absence in medieval Britain. In other words, there is no record of the existence of any stonemason guilds in the historical records of medieval Britain. Whatever the value of the fantastic legends that have been invented by Masons and revisionist historians to explain the origin of their craft, it is certain that it did not originate in medieval Britain. Yet almost every Blue Lodge member will tell you that Masonry originated with the medieval stonecutters of Britain. But then dogs do bark at the moon. It is true, however, that free and accepted Masonry, as it is organized today, is the product of the Grand Lodge of England, which merely revived the cult as a meeting held in the Goose and Gridiron Ale House on St. John the Baptist Day, 24 June 1717. This was in the third year of King George. From Great Britain, its principles spread in organized form throughout the rest of Europe. Lodges were established in Paris, 1725 to 1732, in Germany, 1733, Portugal, 1735, Holland, 1735, Switzerland, 1740, Denmark, 1745, Italy, 1763, and Sweden, 1773. These Freemasons were bound together into a secret society. Members were obliged by oath and by the threat of severe penalties to obey orders and to maintain silence regarding its affairs. The society had its rituals, its degrees, and its passports, of course, its signs. Fraternity within a fraternity, Crowley's Law. Freemasonry is not merely a secretive society. It is a society with diabolical and unspeakable secrets. Membership, of course, need not be kept secret. Nevertheless, many lodges still do not publish their list of members. The initial degrees of Freemasonry consist of 3 steps: entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason, and it said 3 degree, but I thought it was 33rd degree or something like that. 3 degree. It is at this latter level that most Freemasons remain in or leave the lodge. Oh, okay, 3 degree. Thus, most Masons have no idea, not a clue of the true nature of their lodge. But here, ignorance is no bliss. Master Masons are told that the 3 degree is the completion of Freemasonry. The lodge tells the lower Masons that the Master Mason or 3 degree is equivalent to the 32nd degree. This falsehood, which I have heard repeated with my own ears, exposes the true character of the hierarchy of the lodge. It is a temple of deception and dissembling. Such lies can be found put out by Masons all across the internet. The vast majority of Masons will never be invited to take the higher degrees, which is where the real Kabbalah is disclosed. Most of those initiated into Freemasonry leave at Master Mason level, effectively becoming lapsed Masons. This reality reflects the difficulties of them accepting what is revealed to them about the inner workings of their lodge. The truth is that the Master Mason are tilers, mere centers of the lodge. Albert Pike confirms this in his advice to those admitted to the Royal Arch. If you have been disappointed in the first 3 degrees as you have received them, remember that symbols were used not to reveal, but to conceal. Yet not one Mason in 10,000 is aware of this fact. Albert Pike adds, the blue degrees, i.e. up to Master Mason, are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Parts of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. Their true explications as opposed to explanations were reserved for the adepts and princes of Masonry for the high degrees. Masonic author Manly P. Hall explains his let's see, naivety, na- your naivety on the part of lower Masons as being due to the fact that Freemasonry is a two-dimensional organization. Hall was honored by the Scottish Rite Journal, which referred to him as the illustrious Manly P. Hall in its September 1990 issue, and further declared him to be Masonry's greatest philosopher. Hall said, Freemasonry is a fraternity within a fraternity, an outer organization concealing an inner brotherhood of the elect, one visible and the other invisible. The visible society is a splendid camaraderie of free and accepted men joined to devote themselves to ethical, educational, fraternal, patriotic, and humanitarian concern. The invisible society is a secret and most august of majestic dignity, grandeur. Fraternity whose members are dedicated to the service of a mysterious arcanum arcandrum, i.e., a secret or mystery. What is this mysterious ancernum arcandum? The superficial observer of Masonry will never know what Freemasonry is or is seeking to achieve. This is hidden from even the lower Masons, but the illustrious Manly P. Hall reveals it all. Let Hall define this mystery, the heart and soul of the invisible society of higher Masonry. When a Mason learns the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy. Yes, the seething energies of Lucifer is the secret behind Freemasonry, the mystery of the craft. Doubt it not. Satan is the grand master of the lodge. Why are these facts not more well known? Because every Mason takes a vow to hide and to conceal the truth of Masonry from the outside world. So, for example, in the dramatic climax to the Masonic initiation rite, the Mason is required to take a terrible vow of secrecy, the violation of which would result in a deadly and hostile current set in motion by the secret agents of the lodge. If he ever reveals the secrets given to him, he might fall slain and paralyzed. Thus, we see that most Freemasons of the lower ranks are intentionally deceived. They are deliberately misled, even about these things that are revealed to them. The symbols of the lodge are given fanciful and high-sounding interpretations, not unlike the Roman Catholic Church. Many well-meaning men who are members of Freemasonry have no knowledge whatsoever of the inner dualism and the diabolism of this secretive society. In fact, the Masonic Commander General Albert Pike admitted cryptically, fictions are necessary to the people, and the truth becomes deadly to those who are not strong enough to contemplate it in all its brilliance. What does he mean? Pike explains Masonry, like all the religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism, and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages or the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve only to be misled, to conceal the truth, which it calls light, and draws them away from it. I will only respond to this declaration of Pike with the words of the prophet Isaiah. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Wow. Chapter 40. Knights Templarism, Masonry, and the Youth of Demolay. The mighty secret was this: when the order of Knights Templar was abolished, some worthy persons escaped. Every true Mason was a Knight Templar. John T. Robinson, Proofs of a Conspiracy. The history of the medieval order of the Knights Templar is so well known that there seems little point in providing a comprehensive account here. We shall focus on the handover from Templarism to Freemasonry. When the Crusades at an end in the Holy Land, the original charter of the Knights Templar Order came to an end. Further, have fallen out of favor with the people due to no small measure to their abominable rites. The Knights Templar Order was temporarily without a justification. By the decree of the Council of Vienne in 1312, a considerable portion of their assets were conferred upon the Knights of St. John by way of disambiguation. This latter order is also known as the Knights of Rhodes and the Cavaliers of Malta, and the Order of St. John of Jerusalem was by a general decree in the papacy of Clement V, annexed and incorporated into the Knights of Malta. For more on modern temporalism, the reader is referred to Revised Knights Templarism Illustrated, pages 270 to 271. From Templars to Scottish Rite. The official story is that the Knights Templar Order was completely destroyed when its leader, Jacques de Molay, was condemned to death, along with about 15,000 Templars in Spain and France. But the reality was that many Templars escaped, as they had spies in high places who warned them that trouble was coming. Many Templars in England escaped persecution by fleeing into Scotland, where the unsettled condition of that country prevented their discovery or capture. In fact, Count Mirabeau, a famous Freemason and Illuminati, said the Rose-Crooks Masons of the 17th century were only the ancient order of the Templars, secretly perpetuated, mystical, Kabbalistic, and magical. The reorganization of the Templars under the cover of Freemasonry occurred between the years of the Templar arrest in 1307 and their final dissolution in 1312. Ample time and opportunity for an underground system to reorganize itself. Albert Pike wrote, "The order disappeared at once. Its estates and wealth were confiscated, and it seemed to have ceased to exist. Nevertheless, it lived under other names and governed by unknown chiefs, revealing itself only to those who, in passing through a series of degrees, had proven themselves worthy to be known," wrote Pike. How J.D.M. Jacques de Molay and his fellows perished in the flames. But before his execution, the chief of the doomed order organized and instituted what afterward came to be called the occult, hermeneutic, or Scottish Rite Masonry. In the gloom of his prison, the Grand Master created 4 metropolitan lodges: at Naples for the east, at Edinburgh for the west, at Stockholm for the north, and at Paris for the south. The initials of his name, JDM, found in the same order in the first 3 degrees, but are but one of the many internal and cogent proofs that such was the origin of modern Freemasonry. It is for that reason that in the first 3 degrees of Scottish Rite Masonry, the name of Jacques de Molay is memorialized as JDM. At the initiation of a 3rd degree of the Scottish Rite, the very last words which Jacques de Molay uttered from the pyre of his execution are used: "Revenge them, O Lord." We have the word of Professor Robinson that said, Baron Hund, a gentleman of honorable character, got acquainted with the Earl of Kilmarnock, and some other gentlemen, and learned from them that they had some wonderful secrets in their lodges. The mighty secret was this. When the order of Knights Templar was abolished by Philip the Fair and cruelly persecuted, some worthy persons escaped and took refuge in the Highlands of Scotland, where they concealed themselves in caves. These persons possessed the true secrets of Masonry, which had always been in that order, having been acquired by the knights during their services in the East from the pilgrims whom they occasionally protected. The secret was that every true Mason was a Knight Templar. Frightful Jesuitisms. The well-known Templar emblem, the black and white chessboard battle banner, it's like all those tiles that you see everywhere in people's businesses and stuff. Let me reread that. I'm sorry. Chessboard battle banner, or boissant, is found transcribed in the checkerboard floor pattern of the Masonic Lodge. At the initiation of a candidate into the modern Knights Templar degree, the initiate is addressed by the eminent commander as follows. Pilgrims, these libations in honor of the illustrious Grand Masters of ancient craft Freemasonry are taken in acknowledgement of our connection with and veneration for that ancient and honorable institution. Today, the workings and rites of the Knights Templar Order are reinstalled within one of the highest degrees in Freemasonry. Indeed, the 32nd degree of Scottish Rite Freemasonry is the order of the Knights Templar called the Master of the Royal Secret. In the Southern jurisdiction and Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret, in the Northern jurisdiction of the USA. This same degree is also the highest degree, the N plus ultra, in the York Rite system of Masonry, where it is referred to as Order of Knights Templar. And according to Lady Queensborough, the first Knights Templar Order, founded in 118 by Hugh D. Paynes, had 13 degrees. So has its modern successor, which also has the emblem of the cross inside the crown. He said seafront cover. Oh, okay. So it's like a crown and then a cross, and then that's what it is. All right. The Masonic Youth of De Molay. The Order of De Molay is a Masonic youth organization and a movement of international scale with 1,000 chapters worldwide. De Molay was founded as a charity in 1919 in Kansas City, Missouri, by Frank S. Land. Mr. Land was a Freemason who was selected to act as the director of the Masonic Relief and Employment Bureau of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Land and his superiors decided to create a youth arm of Freemasonry, and he based his new order after that of the dead Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay. Jacques de Molay, 1244 to 1314, was born in Vitry, France. At the age of 21, he joined the Order of the Knights Templar, eventually rising to become its Grand Master. In 1314, he was burnt at the stake, partly to destroy the order's increasing power, and partly for having confessed to committing acts of gross sexual indecencies. It was also alleged that the Templars were worshippers of an idol called Baphomet, whose rituals involve sex, magic, spiritualistic illumination. The Templars were charged with practicing authorized and unnatural vice, sodomy, and pedophilia. Yet, it is after this order's leader, Jacques de Molay, that the modern youth order of de Molay derives its name. A rather sick choice, like naming a safe house for battered women, Ted Bundy, saying that Jacques de Molay was a seducer of boys, as Bundy was a fatal abuser of young women. No wonder there is an epidemic of pedophilia in America. The official DeMolay website states DeMolay is a Masonic youth organization for young men between the ages of 12 and 21. DeMolay is nothing more than a state-level feeder organization for the worldwide recruiting of youths into the ranks of Freemasonry and Knights Templarism, a nursery to the Masonic Templar system. Indeed, many distinguished Masonic organizations endorse DeMolay, including the General Grand Chapter of Royal Arch Masons, the Grand Lodges, the Shriners, etc. DeMolay is today regarded by Masonic organizations as a devoted champion of Freemasonry and of its teachings, and its founder, Frank Sherman Land, would himself become a figure of international prominence within Masonry, eventually becoming imperial potentate of the shrine, like the Shriners of North America, from 1945 to 1955. Counted among his friends, U.S. congressmen, state governors, movie and radio stars, military leaders, leaders of industry, presidents of the U.S., and a veritable legion of young men in their teens. DeMolay's alumni include Walt Disney, John Wayne, Walter Cronkite, Football Hall of Famer Fran Tarkenton, and President Bill Clinton, who was a master counselor of DeMolay. In 1987, Clinton, then a senior DeMolay, was chosen by Scottish Rite Freemasonry as the DeMolay International Alumnus of the Year. Don't you just want to cry over this stuff? Because this just angers me so bad. One of DeMolay's motto states, "No DeMolay shall fail as a citizen, as a leader, and as a man." Bill Clinton certainly proved it. That is the power of the continuing influence of the Templars, even to this day, whose existence has been acknowledged by the BBC. And God's going to bring them down, every single one of them. The author, Nesta Webster, comments on the importance of organizations such as DeMolay in the overall strategy of the Jesuit-controlled Masonic societies. It does not matter what the ends may be, whether political, social, or religious. The system remains the same. The setting in motion of a vast number of people and making them work at a cause unknown to them. As regards the other youth organizations called the Boy Scouts, like Lady Queensborough, we refrain here from going too closely into the subject of the Boy and Girl Scouts movement, leaving it as a suggestion that parents, guardians, and teachers of youth would do well to investigate the Judeo-Masonic allegiance of scout leaders and masters. Wow. As Lady Queensborough reminded us, those who rule Freemasonry today rule the world. There's a plate here, and I can see, let's see if I can read it. I'm not sure what this plate is, but it says, "This plate, which is hermeneutic in its design, but is full of Masonic symbolism, represents a winged globe inscribed with a dragon. On the latter stands a human figure of 2 hands and 2 heads, surrounded by the sun, the moon, and 5 stars representing the 7 planets. One of the heads is that of a male and the other of a female. The hand attached to the male part of the figure holds a compass, that to the female, a square." I don't know what they're talking about here. Let's see. "The square and compass thus distributed seem to me to indicate that the originally a phallic meaning was attached to these symbols as there was to the point within the circle, which is this plate also appears in the center of the globe." Honest to God, I don't even know what he's talking about. I'm looking at this picture and it is above my head. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, plate taken from an encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its kindred sciences, page 789 by Albert G. Mackey. So in case you want to go look that up, there you go. Let me repeat it. Taken from an encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its kindred sciences, page 789 by Albert G. Mackey. Chapter 41. Masonic Rites and Symbols, the GAOTU and his magnetism. Nothing is so firmly believed as what is least understood. Montaigne, Essays, Book 2, Chapter 12. But Masonry still survives, vigorous and strong, as when philosophy was taught in the occult or Gnostic schools of Alexandria. Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma. How ridiculous the argument put forward by some writers that Freemasonry is purely a charitable institution. Equally facile is the view that regards the Masonic rites as no more meaningful than that of a type of meaningless, but as symbolic rituals, much like saluting the flag or swearing someone into a public office. On the contrary, as Stanley J. Bransgrove observed at a presentation to the California College of the Societas Rosicruciana in Civitatis Foderates, and that means, I'm thinking, while the social and fraternal aspects of Freemasonry are well known, there are esoteric and hidden levels as well. We may put it even more bluntly than that. Freemasonry is a giant evil and far more occulted than many realize. No, let us not mince our words here. Freemasonry is a ghastly deception, a grim joke, and the author of that joke is not God, but his enemy. This entity, the Masons, called the GAOTU, which stands for Great Architect of the Universe, their parody of Yahweh. This, dear reader, is the sober truth. May this chapter end forever the much vaunted claim and oft-repeated fable of the benign, charitable nature of Freemasonry. This great and almost impenetrable hoax. We will see shortly that Freemasonry is no square deal. The origin of Masonry, its symbols and rituals. The Gnostic secrets of the Masonic traditions come from the Arabs via the Knights Templar, who got theirs from the Babylonians by way of the Persians. These illusion Gnostic rites and the rituals associated with them are found today in the higher degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, an intensely occult order. The rites are also consistent with the inner core of Roman Catholic doctrine. I will justify this latter assertion in due course. Suffice to say here that Professor Robinson confirms the first two assertions. The true secrets of Masonry, which had always been in that order, having been acquired by the Knights during their services in the East from the pilgrims whom they occasionally protected or delivered. Every true Mason is a Knight Templar. Jesuitism is a mere variation on Knights Templarism, although far more odious in character. And true Catholicism is Jesuitism. We shall now see why. We shall now see why. See? Okay. There exists a set of documents now known collectively as the Old Charges, according to which Freemasonry is declared to be an ancient and honorable institution. In another Masonic source, we are told that Masonry is a system of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. Ancient, no doubt it is, veiled in symbols and allegory. That too is true. But an honorable institution? A system of morality? Certainly not. These eulogies are not justified by the sober facts. To explain the reason for so asserting, we again turn to the book Morals and Dogma, the Masonic Bible for the higher degrees. The book's full title is Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Morals and Dogma is a book of esoteric occult philosophy written by Albert Pike, the celebrated 19th century Grand Pontiff General of Masonry. The work was first published in 1871 by the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree Scottish Rite for the Southern jurisdiction in the United States. There have been several subsequent editions of Morals and Dogma, the original version being now out of print. It has 861 pages of text and 218 pages of index and is over 2 inches thick. It discusses the philosophical symbolism of each of the degrees of Freemasonry in painfully exhaustive detail. In the older editions of the book, the title page states in large, bold letters, Esoteric Book, for Scottish Rite use only, to be returned upon withdrawal or death of recipient. Clearly, the original edition of the book was not for public consumption. Hence, most Masons have never even heard of the book, never mind read it, as it was traditionally given to the candidate only upon his receipt of the 14th degree of the Scottish Rite Masonry. Apparently, this practice was stopped in 1974. The book has not been given to candidates since 1974. Another book, A Bridge to Light, by Rex R. Hutchins, is instead provided to candidates today. There are now 2 versions of Morals and Dogma, distinctly different to the original manuscript published in 1871. The reasons for the change and deletions in the newer versions will soon become apparent in the details that follow. While writing this volume, I spoke to an ex-Mason and asked him whether he had read Pike's book, Morals and Dogma, and mentioned some of its contents to him. This ex-Mason looked at me with a very puzzled expression and said, "That's news to me." He had not even so much as heard of its author, Albert Pike, notwithstanding that Pike was the Chief Inspector General, Knights Commander, and Grand Pontiff for Masonry for many years. Grand Pontiff simply means High Priest or Chief Priest. We must not forget that Freemasons describe the Masonic Lodge as a temple. Pike was also an eminent American lawyer, a judge. The reason for this long introduction to the book will soon become apparent. Now, there are some Masons who will tell you that Albert Pike's work and statements have been discredited. However, David Ovenson wrote a book, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, The Masons and the Building of Washington, D.C., in 1999, which has a glowing foreword written by C. Fred Klein, Nicked 33rd degree Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council, 33rd degree Mother Council of the World. This is what the book has to say about Albert Pike. 1. Albert Pike, probably the most learned esoteric in the United States. That's on page 31. Number 2, Albert Pike was a fine scholar in some areas on page 92. Number 3, the learned Albert Pike on page 366. Albert Pike, Masonry is the worship of Allah. The Shriner Masons, 32nd degree and above, kneel before the Quran and take his oath in the name of Allah. I did not know that. Do you doubt this? No, I don't. Masonic Grand Pontiff Albert Pike confirms this testimony. The Bible is an indispensable part of the furniture of a Christian lodge only because it is the sacred book of the Christian religion. The Hebrew Pentateuch in a Hebrew lodge and the Quran in a Mohammedan one belong on the altar. But one of these and the square and compass are the great lights by which a mason must walk and work. So, according to the Grand Pontiff of Masonry, Albert Pike, the Bible, the Hebrew Pentateuch, and the Quran belong on the altar, but only one of these, along with the Masonic square and compass, are the great lights by which a mason, every mason, must walk and work. The question is, which one of these is the book by which the masons walk and work? The following oath taken by every Shriner Mason offers up a clue. This so makes me so sick. It makes me sick because my daughter's grandfather or great-grandfather was a Shriner. Man, if I would have known things back then, I'd probably be dead. Okay, let's keep going. It is in willful violation. Therefore, may I incur the fearful penalty of having my eyeballs pierced to the center with a three-edged blade, my feet flayed, and I be forced to walk hot sands upon the sterile shores of the Red Sea until the flaming sun shall strike me with a livid plague. And may Allah, the God of Arab, Muslim, and Mohammedan, the God, small g, of our fathers, support me to the entire fulfillment of the same. Amen, amen. The Masonic Digest puts the issue beyond doubt. Masonry has nothing to do with the Bible. It is not founded upon the Bible. For it, if it were, it would not be Masonry. It would be something else. And C.F. McQuagg adds his weight in gold. Freemasonry is not Christian, nor a substitute for it. What would it be if it were founded on the Bible? Christianity. So what then is it, since it is not founded upon the Bible? According to Shaw and McKinney, every Shriner kneeling before the Quran takes his oath in the name of Allah and acknowledges his pagan god, small g, of vengeance as his own, the God of our fathers. And in the ritual, he acknowledges Islam, the declared blood enemy of Christianity, as one true path. Moreover, the Masonic square and compass are phallic sex symbols of the male and female genitalia, the veneration and worship of the sex organs. These, along with the Quran, the square and compass properly understood, are the lights by which a Mason must walk and work. Thus, Pike mocks those ignorant Freemasons who vulgarly imagine that their craft begun with the Dacian architects or the German stoneworkers. Masonry, writes Robert Freck Gould, is the direct descendant or as a survival of the mysteries of Isis and Osiris in Egypt. And Arthur Ward, another Grand Master, asserts, when latter he, the Mason, is given light, it means really that he is taught the principles of occultism. Albert Pike, Masonry is the worship of Lucifer. As I said earlier, Freemasonry is a gigantic evil. The lower ranks, the Blue Lodge, are not told that Freemasonry is the worship of Lucis, and are given grossly misleading explanations of the Masonic symbols and craft. The truth is withheld from them. The great secret is reserved for the inner circle of higher Masons only. One Master Mason, i.e. a mere third degree, even told me that whatever might be the situation in other lodges, things are different in his. He confidently assured me, in our lodge, we don't worship Lucifer. Like Dr. Moray, his lower degree Mason insisted that there were some bad apples higher up in the lodge who have given Masonry a bad name, but they are not a true reflection of the teachings of Freemasonry. We must now dispel this popular myth forever. July 14th, 1889, Albert Pike, Grand Commander, Sovereign Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry, is said to have issued these private instructions to the 23rd Masonic Supreme Council's Masonic leaders throughout the world. That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign grand inspectors general, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degree. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the high degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Yes. Whew. I'm just dumbfounded that Grandpa Edwards knew he was worshiping Lucifer. I can't get this in my head. Yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately, Adonai is also God. Now, see, and here where he wrote this, he has Lucifer as God, capital G, and then unfortunately, Adonai is also God, small g. So he was just like demoting God Almighty left and right. For the eternal law is that there is no light without shade, no beauty without ugliness, no white without black. For the absolute can only exist as two gods, darkness being necessary for light to serve as its foil, as the pedestal is necessary to the statue, and the brake to the locomotive. The true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer. Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil. However, to be fair, I must point out that in more recent Masonic literature, every effort is made to avoid a direct linkage of their craft to Lucifer as a god. And then he has small g there. The letter allegedly written by Albert Pike has been strenuously disavowed. Today, Masons, sensitive to the damage caused to them by being classed as Luciferians, have sought to argue that Lucifer is used in their literature in merely a classical or metaphoric sense to convey the desire for knowledge. But even that does not help their cause, as Lucifer offered to show Adam and Eve the knowledge of good and evil. Elsewhere, in the more ludicrous of their publications, the connection to Luciferianism is said to be mere anti-Mason propaganda. There are also those like Dr. Robert Moray, an alleged expert on Freemasonry, who dispute that Masons worship Lucifer. Dr. Robert Moray confidently asserts that the claim against Masonry being the worship of Lucifer is a hoax issued by one Leo Taxel in 1889. He further stated that Albert Pike never said Lucifer is God. Both these positions are so patently flawed and discredited that one marvels that he calls himself an expert on Freemasonry. His learning on this subject seems borrowed, for his arguments are too often not his own. But, as they say in Latin, post tenebras lux, after darkness, light. The fictitious Leo Taxel defense, no help for the widow's son. I will now briefly but thoroughly address the above denial and shed light on this spurious lie perpetuated by Freemasonry. In doing so, I hope that darkness will give way to light. All the above defenses are false. Understandably, those in the lower ranks of Freemasonry will object in anguish over my depiction of Masonry as being satanic. They will probably honestly exclaim that this is not the situation in their lodge, that they know of no one who worships Lucifer. The Grand Masters of the lodge lie about the above quote of Albert Pike. They claim that it was a hoax made by a Frenchman, Leo Taxel, real name Gabriel Jogan Pages, who, they say, later publicly confessed to the same some 8 years later in 1897, when he suddenly announced at a public meeting in Paris that he had concocted the above letter in the name of Albert Pike as an elaborate joke, and that the letter should be regarded as a hoax. How convenient. 8 years later, no court would accept such a belated confession, but Masons will accept anything. No surprise either that Leo Taxel, an ex-Freemason, was educated by the Jesuits. and would later openly confess Catholicism. But whatever the truth of Taxel's confession to the hoax, we need not rely on any such alleged hoax, for we know that whether or not what Leo Taxel wrote was true. Professor Manly P. Hall, a renowned and respected Masonic scholar, confirmed this. When a Mason learns the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo, a living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft, the seething energies of Lucifer, and in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward. I think I said that wrong. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, i.e., before he is allowed to move to a higher degree in the craft, he must prove his ability to properly apply that energy. In the secret doctrine, Helena Parvana Blavatsky explains Hall's statement as follows. So she was alive when Manly P. Hall was. I did not know this because there's actually very old videos of Manly P. Hall on YouTube. So I didn't know that. Well, that is insanely. I did not know any of this. Anyway, let me go on. I'm sorry. In the secret doctrine, Helena Parvana Blavatsky explains Hall's statement as follows. Once that the key to Genesis is in our hands, the scientific and symbolical Kabbalah unveils the secret. The great serpent of the Garden of Eden and the Lord God are identical. Okay, maybe she didn't know Manly P. Hall, but she's kind of like chiming. What she says correlates with what he says. Maybe that's what I'm catching here. No Mason of repute or standing has ever denied the statement by their illustrious Manly P. Hall. And so, in light of Hall's and Blavatsky's revelations, Lucifer is the god of Masonry. But the conclusion to the matter is given by Albert Pike himself on page 321 of his book, Morals and Dogma. Pike wrote, Lucifer is the light bearer. It is he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerably blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls. Doubt it not. We need not say more. There is their doctrine, a doctrine most consistent with the letter allegedly written by Leo Taxel, 1889, which states, Lucifer, god of light, is struggling against Adonai, i.e. Jesus, the god of darkness and evil. Thus, the 1889 letter calls Jesus the god of darkness and Lucifer the god of light, a view found in Pike's own book, the Bible of Higher Masonry. Thus, even if we were to grant that Pike did not issue the communique of July 14th, 1889, his own work, Morals and Dogma, makes the same claim alleged to have been falsely made by Leo Taxel in 1889. That Lucifer is the light bearer. Masons warmly refer to this light as the great architect of the universe, or GAOTU, their supreme being, grand architect, or watchmaker of the universe. So even if we were to accept that the letter of July 14th, 1889 was a hoax by Taxel, we still have an authentic and unimpeachable statement from Albert Pike himself that in Masonry, Lucifer is the light bearer, and that only feeble, sensual, and selfish souls cannot see Lucifer's splendors. Perhaps this is the reason that the use or mention of the name of Jesus Christ is strictly forbidden in well-ordered lodges. Now, Morals and Dogma was written in 1871, 18 years before the alleged Leo Taxel hoax of July 14th, 1889, which is more likely to be correct. The alleged hoax of 1889 or the statement in the earlier book penned by Albert Pike himself, who at the time was the Grand Commander General of all Masonry. Did Pike change his mind by 1889, or did the Masonic hierarchy have hand in this fictitious Taxel matter? The latter of these two alternatives seem more convincing, that the Freemasons are at their old tricks again. For all we know, this man, Leo Taxel, may well have been a Mason himself, or set up by the Masons to issue the letter and then make a perfidious confession as to its falsehood. Nothing is too far-fetched in Masonry. Soon they will be telling us that Albert Pike was not a true Mason, or that he corrupted true Masonry, as the intriguant Dr. Robert Morey has asserted. The worshippers of Lucifer can be expected to lie, for he, Satan, is a liar and the father of lies. John chapter 8, verse 44. And Masons, as we have saw from their very oaths, are expressly told to lie. I told you there would be no help for the widow's son. All their lies will now be exposed. In case you think I'm being too harsh, I remind you again of what is commanded of the Masons. If your wife or child or friend should ask you anything about your initiation, as for instance, if your clothes were taken off, or if you were blindfolded, if you had a rope around your neck, etc., you must conceal. Hence, of course, you must deliberately lie about it. It is part of your obligation, i.e., their oath. Freemasonry, a nursery for occultists. Freemasonry is not just a secret society. It has served for centuries as a most fertile incubator for occultists and occult orders of all kinds. Note carefully the words of a most influential theosophist and Mason, Alice A. Bailey. The Masonic movement is the home of the mysteries and the seat of initiation. It is far more occultic organization than can be realized, and it is intended to be the training school for the coming advanced occultist. Antoine Levay, the high priest of the Church of Satan, states instructively, Masonic orders have contained the most influential men in many governments, and virtually every occult order has many Masonic roots. The resemblances of Masonic rites to witchcraft are numerous. Witches, many thousands of years ago, were performing the same ritual rites as Masons do today. Hence the many references in the Masonic writings to the ancient mystery religions. Indeed, the founders of 20th century Wicca, the so-called white witchcraft, were all Masons. Little wonder then that the witch's way of salvation is to be found in the work and symbol of the Masonic Lodge. As the co-Mason and occultist Alice A. Bailey said, the Masonic movement is the custodian of the law. It is the home of the mysteries and the seat of initiation. It holds in its symbolism the ritual of deity, and the way of salvation is pictorially preserved in its work. The methods of deity are demonstrated in its temples, and under the all-seeing eye, the work can go forward. In their respective place of worship, the Mason, like the Catholic, is surrounded by the very signs and symbols by which the ancient pagans sought to express the power and presence of their gods, small g. Both temples, the Mason's Lodge and the Cathedral, hold striking resemblance to enchanted places, like those where, in an earlier age, the mystics called upon the spirits of their hidden meetings. In the catacombs of the Egyptian pyramid, or in the cave temple sacred to Mithra, or in the rocky labyrinths of the holy Druids, or the rites of the Templars. Like the cords worn by the Templars, the Masonic Blue Lodge initiation requires the use of a cord or cable tow. A cable tow is wound around his body 3 times, and a bandage or hoodwink is tied very closely over his eyes. I have got to, guys, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to pause this. I don't know how. Let me see if I can pause it, because I think my water is boiling out of my canner. I'll be right back. Let's see. I'm not sure. Hold on, guys. Okay. I'm not sure if you heard me go through the house and empty the scanner or not. I have no idea. So let's continue. Okay. Oh, likewise, when the Templars processed around their circular churches, they had only one way to move in a circle, just as today's Masons process in their circumambulance of the lodge. This latter rite is found at the level of the entered apprentice degree and is actually called the rite of circumambulation. Circumambulation, walking around an altar 3 times or more in a clockwise direction, is a common practice in Hindu temples and weddings. It is interesting to note that, like Freemasonry, the Templars were also initiated into the mysteries of the Kabbalah. Indeed, Freemasonry repeatedly uses the symbols in its Hermetic occult rites, all in reference to the sun god, who Albert Pike and other Masonic sources admit is none other than Lucifer, son of the morning. Isaiah 14, verse 12. In the ritual initiation of the Master Mason, an intensely occult experience involving potent symbols of death and resurrection, the initiate is told that he must surrender to the deity before he can be admitted to the secrets of the degree. And so, in the initiation ceremony, he is placed in the symbolic grave, a literal coffin. The Masonic initiate is also told that in order to achieve this high state of consciousness and to comprehend the mysteries, he must undergo a period of disorientation in the real experience, after which he then knows himself to be a spiritual being. This initiation experience is psychologically powerful as it is dramatic. And as we have seen, the light by which the Shriner Mason, and indeed every Mason, if Albert Pike is to be believed, must live by the Quran, and they worship the god small g of Arab. According to a verse in the Quran, it is Satan who is the head of the angels. Quran chapter 21, verse or surah or whatever, 82. The Masonic initiate, like the witches' initiate, must stand at the northeast corner of their lodge and coven, respectively. Both are blindfolded and tied with a cord. Both swear deadly oaths of secrecy to things not yet known to them. The cord, or cable tow, is spoken of in the oral tradition of witchcraft as the umbilical cord, which connects the goddess of witchcraft, the Queen of Heaven, to her children. The Masonic square and the compass are emblems of the generative organs, and the G, generative sexual potency, are symbolic of the sacred altar of witchcraft, the witch's pentagram. Thus, veiled within the symbols of Masonry are venerations of the deity and the very working tools of witchcraft. Consider any Masonic lodge, there you will find the symbol of Judaism and all the pagan religions. Another deeply occult symbol of deity is the all-seeing eye, a familiar symbol which can be found on the back of the U.S. $1 bill and wherever the Freemasons or Jesuits have their strongholds. So we are not surprised to see it as the chief logo of the Columbia Broadcasting System on television, CBS. The all seeing eye is sometimes in a triangle, sometimes in clouds, is nearly always surrounded by a glory or sunburst. In Egypt, it had the generally accepted symbolism of indicating the presence of a particular deity, Baal, Bel, or Lucifer. It represents the all overseeing awareness and presence of Osiris, the god small g of the dead, who the occultists admit is Lucifer. In Chinese mythology, Osiris is called Fuxi, or I don't know how to pronounce that, completely do not know. Fuxi, the sun god. And her consort is Nuwa, the moon deity. Thus we marvel at the sight of the Eye of Horus, the Egyptian sun god, pictured on the back of the American dollar bill, floating atop a great Egyptian pyramid. This eye is a key symbol of Freemasonry. The Mason author Carl Claudy says this is one of the oldest and most widespread symbols denoting God. We find it in Egypt and India. In Egypt, the open eye represents Osiris. In India, Siva, is represented by an eye, bindi, or red dot. The Hindu tradition has this very symbol called the third eye of Shiva, or the power of Parashiva. And according to the occultist Helena Blavatsky, Parashiva is another name for Satan. As to the other Masonic icon, the obelisk, Albert Pike writes, hence the significancy of the phallus, or of its inoffensive substitute, the obelisk, rising as an emblem of the resurrection by the tomb of buried deity. Perhaps this explains why we see so many obelisks atop the graves of Freemasons. It is an emblem of the resurrection of buried deity. Freemasons are told that they can secure eternal life through the phallic rituals of the lodge. The obelisk, originally from the Babylonian and the Egyptian mysteries, is spoken of in the Bible. King Jehu said to the guards and to the officers, "Go in and slay them, let none escape." And they smote them with the sword, and the guards before the king threw their bodies out and went into the inner dwelling of the house of Baal. They brought out the obelisk of the house of Baal and burned them. That is how the Bible speaks of the obelisk. Another occult rite of Freemasonry, which we have mentioned previously, is the rite of circumambulation. The glossary of 6 religions in the 20th century defines circumambulation as walking around a person or a sacred thing to show respect and to concentrate one's attention on it. Muslims go in an anti-clockwise direction around the Kaaba at Mecca. Buddhists go around the stupas clockwise, usually 3 times. In the Hadith, Volume 4, Book 55, number 650, Sahih Bukhari states, "While I was asleep circumambulating the Kaaba in my dream, suddenly I saw a man of brown complexion and lank hair walking between 2 men, and water was dropping from his head. I asked, 'Who is this?' The people said, 'He is the son of Mary.'" In Volume 4, Book 55, number 649, we read, "While sleeping near the Kaaba last night, I saw in my dream a man of brown hair. His hair was lank and water dribbling down his head, and he was placing his hands on the shoulder of 2 men while circumambulating the Kaaba. I asked, 'Who is this?' They replied, 'This is Jesus, the son of Mary.'" The Kaaba is of a pagan origin with a deeply occult meaning. The cult rite of Paladin. In the book The Master's Carpet by Edmund Rowan, past Grand Master of Lodge 639 Chicago, we read, "The lodge room then is brought before us as a symbol of the universe, governed by the sun god, and its cubical form expressed in the language of the ritual is made to represent the united power of light and darkness. The lodge room is where the god of nature, the Gaotu, always presides, where his symbol is always displayed, where his worship is always practiced." The Mason is told at the ritual of exaltation, the great architect of the universe, or Gaotu, is Jabulon. Jabulon is a code name for Lucifer. Do you doubt this? Do you? The highest Masonic rite, which overarches all other rites, is called Palladism, or the Palladium rite. That Palladism borrows heavily from the Knights Templar can be seen from the act that Palladism honors the Templars' god, Baphomet. Griffin informs us that Pike organized the new and reformed Palladian rite. 3 supreme councils were established at Charleston, South Carolina, Rome, Italy, Berlin, Germany. Says Domicio Margata, a 33rd degree Mason. The rite of Palladium is little known, as the number of its initiates is strictly limited, and the rite itself and all its deliberations is kept a closely guarded secret. No mention of it would ever be made in the assemblies of the lodges and inner shrines of other rites. Margada then adds, Palladiism is necessarily a Luciferian rite. Its religion of Manichaean neo-Gnosticism, teaching that the divinity is dual and that Lucifer is the equal of Adonai, Christ, with Lucifer, the god of light and goodness, struggling for humanity against Adonai, the god of darkness and evil. What more evidence do we need that the Masonic lodges, like the Jesuit navetes, are temples where Satan dwelleth, to use a term from the book of Revelation? The Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics puts it this way. The latter group, with which we are mainly concerned, are known under the alternative names of Luciferians and Palladists. They were said to adore Lucifer, the equal and foe of Adonai, Yahweh. He was, in their view, the god of light, the good principle, while Adonai was the god of darkness, the evil principle. The name Palladis is derived from Palladium, which they, the higher Masons, were said to revere, namely the Baphomet, or grotesque idol. These relics were averred to have become the sacred objects of a society which was a development of free masonry. Insane. The Builders, already cited, is a small but interesting book which, according to Henry Wilson Coyle, was written at the request of the Grand Lodge of Iowa and is in widespread use among Masons. Coyle wrote in his Masonic Encyclopedia, Dr. Newton, who was an active Freemason and lectured widely to lodges in Iowa, delivering especially a lecture called The Men's House. At the request of the Grand Lodge of Iowa, he wrote The Builders, a copy of which was presented to every candidate raised in that state. It has also become one of the most widely read Masonic books of modern times. It has been translated into several foreign languages, and after the first edition in 1914, it appeared in foreign editions as follows. 1915, 1916, 1920, 1921, 22, 24, 26. It was revived in 1930, 1945, and in 1946. Revised and enlarged in 1951. The publisher of The Builders described the book in one of its catalogs as the outstanding classic in Messianic literature of all times. Many Grand Lodges present a copy to each newly raised Mason. In a chapter titled The Secret Doctrine, the author of The Builders gives the following tribute to Arthur Edward Waite. Perhaps the greatest student in this field of esoteric teaching and method, certainly the greatest now living, is Arthur Edward Waite, to whom it is a pleasure to pay tribute. And the result, speaking of Waite's books, is a series of volumes, noble in form, united in aim, unique in wealth, of revealing beauty, and of unequaled worth. Beginning as far back in 1886, Waite issued his study of the mysteries of magic, a digest of the writings of Eliphaz Levi, to whom Albert Pike was more indebted than he let us know. And if I'm not mistaken, it was that Eliphaz Levi is the one that made that Baphomet statue, writing statue, whatever. It was a drawing, and then they turned it into a statue. In The Mysteries of Magic, Arthur Edward Waite writes unashamedly, the great Lucifer, termed the devil by the ignorant. What is more absurd and more impious than to attribute the name of Lucifer to the devil, that is, to a personified evil? Lucifer, in the spirit of intelligence and love, the Paraclete, I think that's how you say that, the Holy Spirit, the physical Lucifer, is the great agent of universal magnetism. What is the Paraclete? its root in Greek parakletos, meaning comforter. So Masons believe Lucifer is the comforter and the light bearer. And what about universal magnetism? This is a term used to describe the occult theory of life force. In Hinduism, it is called the Shakti field and Shiva field. Wiccans refer to this force as the goddess or Pan. Some Satanists alluded to the dark mother, Kali Shiva. In the Vedic Tantric tradition, it is called the Sat, hence the chant Sat Nam in yoga, which Will Reich termed organ energy. We read earlier that the Hindus believe in the third eye of Shiva for the Parashiva, which, according to Blavatsky, is another name for Satan. See citation later on. Here is the connection to Freemasonry. The Mason author Karl Claudi writes, "This, the symbol of all-seeing eye, is one of the oldest and most widespread symbols denoting God. We find it in Egypt and India. In Egypt, the open eye represents Osiris. In India, Shiva. Siva is represented by an eye, the bindi or red dot." H.P. Blavatsky expands on this even further. Fohat is that occult electric vital power which, under the will of the creative logos, who she says is Lucifer, unites and brings together all forms, giving them the first impulse, which becomes in time law. He is metaphysically the objectified thought of the gods, the word made flesh, the active force in universal life. This is almost identical to the description of Lucifer given by Masonic Grand Masters Albert Pike, Manly P. Hall, and Arthur E. Waite. The Jesuits, too, have had a significant role and influence in the development of this theory of universal magnetism or vital power, occult energy. The eminent Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher, 1602 to 1680, sometimes spelled Kirchner, wrote the most comprehensive work on magnetism in the 17th century, a book called Magnus Siv de Art Magneticida Opus Tripartitium, Magnets or the Art of Magnetism, 1643. According to Kircher, the soul, spirit, and physical phenomena belong to the dimensions of magnetism. Kircher linked his magnetic interpretation of the universe to the more ancient teachings about the mysterious fundamental force taught by Plato, the unspeakable power of the Greeks. In Kircher's equation of the divine spirit, called Paraclete, or the Holy Spirit by the Masonic Arthur Edward Waite, is this magnesia dia with all persuasive power. This magnesia was identified as the central spiritual sun or sun god by the Kabbalists. And you will recall that Waite says that the physical Lucifer is the great agent of universal magnetism. Helena P. Blavatsky, the notorious occultist and necromancer who said that Lucifer is the logos or the light, relied extensively on Kircher's work to write her books. It is also noteworthy that the father of modern hypnosis, Anton Mesmer, isn't that funny, Mesmer? Forget it. I'm just keep going. Was exposed to Kircher's idea on magnetism during his studies at the leading Jesuit college in Dillingen in Bavaria, the birthplace of Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati. As we saw earlier, the hypnosis is the essence of the spiritual exercises of the Loya. Note, too, that the act of hypnotism uses the same occult energy invoked in yoga, kundalini, parashiva, or serpent energy. Shiva is one of the principal gods of the Hindu pantheon, sometimes represented as a yogi in whom are concentrated the powers acquired by meditation, penance, and a life of austerity. Shiva is also known, according to some ancient authorities, by many epithets, among them the third-eyed one. Shiva, writes Blavatsky, is also called Bel, Baal, and Baal, and Siva, the destroyer, the chaos of the Babylonians, the great dragon Tiamat, the sea serpent, the devil, all pedigrees of the devil. The Hindus teach that it is through the goddess Kali, Shakt, the wife of Shiva, that we receive the experience of enlightenment or inner illumination, as well as all other mystical or psychic experience. Hindus call Siva, the mystery of the son of the Dark Mother. This son, according to Anton LaVey and Helena Blavatsky, is called Siva, Satan, Ba, Lucifer. It is well established that Shiva's mother, the Dark Mother, is given disguised names such as Black Madonna, Sybil, Diana, and Queen of Heaven, which are nothing more than veiled appellations of Sophia, also known as Isis and Mary. Decrees of Freemasonry. There are two paths of the Masonic hierarchy, the Scottish Rite and York Rite Masonry. The Scottish Rite awards 30 higher degrees plus the 3 lower Blue Lodge degrees. The higher degrees include Secret Master, 4th degree, to Sovereign Grand Inspector General, 33rd degree. The York Rite awards 10 degrees, from Mark Master to Order of Knights Templar, and the latter being equivalent to a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason. The 9 degree is called the Encampment of the Knights of Malta degree, and is also the home of the Knight of the Red Cross and the Knight Templar. In fact, American Templarism comprises 3 degrees: 1, Order of the Red Cross of Rome, its fuller name; 2, Knights Templar; and 3, Knights of Malta. The Order of the Knights of Malta is, in fact, the second step in the Commandery of Knights Templar, which is the 10th degree. Even hats and uniforms are very similar. It talks about a diagram above here, which I certainly cannot read all that. But it says the diagram above shows the degree in the Masonic hierarchy. Note that the only Scottish Rite lists its degrees by number, i.e. 1 degree to 33rd degree. The York Masonic Rite on the left of the diagram designates its degrees by name and even omits some of the lower degrees contained in the Scottish Rite. The highest degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the Meritorious degree, the degree of the Illuminati, also known as the Meritorious Service Award, or the Honorary Inspector General of the 33rd degree. The Masonic Forum website states the 33rd degree is conferred upon those members of the 32nd degree who have been outstanding in their contribution to Freemasonry to the Scottish Rite. It cannot be sought by application, but must be such a man as described above, who has been selected by the Supreme Council of his jurisdiction and who is not less than 33 years of age. The motto of this degree, the 33rd degree, is Ordo ab Chao. Out of chaos comes order. Isn't that something else? And then that ends that. And it just has pictures here. I don't know how to put pictures in comments, or I would take pictures and put them in the comments. I don't know how to do that, though. But it says the hieroglyphs on the Masonic Egyptian obsolete New York City, left. And then the titulary of Ramses II on the obsolete in Vatican City, Rome. I didn't know that stuff was on there. And then over here it says Karnak Hypostyle Hall Temple of Ammon from George. And this is, I believe, in Egypt. And then a depiction of some of the symbols found in the interior of the Masonic Lodge, showing the black and white chessboard floor, checkerboard pattern, similar to the battle banner of the Knights Templar Order. All right, brothers and sisters, that ends that reading for today. And this old gal will probably go to bed. So keep your eyes on Jesus, brothers and sisters. Your nose in the book, which is the Word of God. And let us embed the Word of God upon the tablets of our hearts, so we will not sin against God or be deceived. Have a good night. Sweet dreams, guys.